It was my 22nd birthday. The surprise party my friends threw for me was, without a doubt, one of the best moments of my life. They rented out an entire restaurant, showered me with heartfelt gifts, and filled the night with endless laughter. I even cried a little. My phone was overflowing with messages from friends. "Can't wait to see your next chapter, Betty. Hurry up and give me one of your company business cards once it's official." All full of excitement for the future. With the vibration of constant notifications feeling like proof of my happiness, I opened the door to my living room while still feeling on a high. But at that very instant, my fragile happiness shattered, like thin glass cracking under the slightest pressure. My father was sitting back on the sofa with his legs spread out carelessly, while my mother sat beside him with her arms folded and a serious look on her face. My younger sister Amelia didn't even glance at me, her eyes fixed on her phone. The atmosphere was suffocating, like detectives waiting to interrogate a suspect of a serious crime. I stopped in my tracks. "What's going on? Why are you all up this late?" It took everything I had to keep my voice calm. The heavy tension in the air slowly coiled around my stomach. My father was the first to speak. He muted the TV with the remote, turned toward me lazily, and said, "Oh, there you are. Perfect timing. We need to talk." "Talk?" "Yeah, the family needs a lump sum of money, and since you're part of this family, it's only natural that you help out." "What do you mean? Did something happen?" In response to my question, he looked at me with that smug, testing expression of his and said, "It's about Amelia. She's decided to study design for a year in Paris next year." Impressive, isn't it? Study abroad? The words got caught in my throat. Amelia finally looked up and turned her phone toward me, showing pictures of glittering Parisian streets and a luxurious apartment. "Yeah, all my friends are going, and honestly, I'd look bad if I didn't. Plus, it's not just about studying. I'm planning to build connections over there and eventually start my own brand. So think of it as an investment for my future." She said that without a hint of shame. I was speechless. Where do you think that kind of money's going to come from? Hearing my mutter, my father lounged back on the sofa and spoke, as if a king were issuing an order. "From your money, of course. As her older sister, it's your responsibility to support her bright future. Besides, the Johnson family next door sent their daughter abroad, too. We can't fall behind them." His calm voice made me dizzy. A cold premonition ran up my spine. They knew. I'd been working late nights, turning down invitations from friends, saving every dollar I could. And then, as if declaring something completely reasonable, my father continued, "That's why we sold the stuff you had in your safe." What? For a moment, I couldn't process the words. My safe? The one hidden deep in my closet? The one no one was supposed to know about? The box that held my entire future? Amelia smirked at me and added, "Come on. Your company's doing well, isn't it? You've always been the one who can do everything on her own. You make plenty of money. Sharing a little with your family is the least you can do. It's only fair." My mind went blank. The floor tilted beneath me. The world blurred before me. I stumbled toward my room. The closet door in the corner was slightly open, something I never left ajar. I always kept it tightly shut, hidden behind a bookshelf for good measure. When I opened it, I saw my small gray safe lying on its side, unrecognizable. The door was twisted, the thick steel pried open with something like a crowbar, its surface scarred and mangled as if mauled by some beast. My hands trembled as I reached into the empty shell. The cool, solid weight that should have been there, the gold bars, were gone. They weren't just metal. They were my sleepless nights after university lectures, writing business proposals at diners until dawn. The days I'd go home on the first train, shower, and rush straight back to class. While my friends spent their time in clubs and parties, I was meeting small business owners, pitching ideas, begging for contracts. I still remember the night I landed my first deal. I sat alone in a burger shop, eating and crying out of sheer relief. That gold was every bit of profit I'd earned since then. It was my startup capital, my deposit for an office in the city, the first 6 months of my employee's salary. 5 gleaming bars that embodied my entire future. And now they are gone, without a trace. I couldn't breathe, choked by anger and despair. I turned and walked back into the living room. The cheerful lights and laughter from the TV variety show only made the unnatural tension in the house more grotesque. That wasn't just money. I worked nights without sleep, scraping through exhaustion and humiliation just to earn that. It was my ticket, my future, the capital to start my company. You didn't just steal cash. You trampled on my dreams, my effort, my entire life. It was a scream torn straight from my soul. For the first time, my father looked at me with a serious face. But there was no guilt in his eyes, only the cold certainty of someone who believes he owns everything he sees. The truth is, I'd started my own business while still in college, precisely to escape this suffocating house. In my sophomore year, I won a campus business contest. And with that as my seed capital, I launched a consulting firm for small businesses. People laughed at first, but I kept pushing, visiting clients on foot, building trust from the ground up. By the time I graduated, I was earning several times more than most people my age. Naturally, I paid my own tuition, my living expenses, everything. I had cut all financial ties with my parents. They knew I made money, but they never cared how I earned it, never saw the effort behind it. To them, I was just the odd daughter who somehow makes money doing something mysterious. I had been planning to move out soon, and that plan has come a little earlier than expected. My father looked down at me, his eyes like ice, calm, patronizing, final. He spoke slowly, as if lecturing a disobedient child. You live under my roof. Everything in this house belongs to the family. That's the rule here. The money you made is only possible because I raised you and put food in your mouth. His words sank into me like cold iron nails. In that instant, the fire inside me died out. Something deep within me froze solid. So this is it, I thought. To them, I was never a daughter with her own will, just a convenient source of income. A possession. I slowly lifted my head and memorized their faces. My father's, my sister's, and my mother's. She was trembling with her eyes downcast. Then I turned away without a word and walked back to my room. I closed the door and locked it. Not a single tear fell. From that moment, my mind was crystal clear. This wasn't running away, it was an escape, a declaration of war. I packed my important business documents and the backup drive containing my client data into a waterproof case. As the night deepened and the whole house fell into a deep sleep, I quietly began to move. I headed for the small shed at the edge of the yard, the old one that had once been my childhood hideout. Beneath its floorboards, I had hidden my real assets. The safe upstairs had only been a decoy. Maybe, deep down, I'd always known this day would come. The remaining gold bars, the emergency cash I'd kept for the worst-case scenario, tens of thousands of dollars in bills. I stuffed everything into a duffel bag and made trip after trip to load it all into my car. When I was done, I got behind the wheel, started the engine, and looked into the rearview mirror. The house stood there in darkness, silent, lifeless. No goodbyes, no excuses, no regrets. I pressed down on the accelerator. I sped through the quiet midnight streets and merged onto the highway. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just needed to get as far away from that house as possible. The next morning, the breakfast table must have been silent as a grave. My mother, discovering my empty bed and stripped closet, let out a small scream. My father, woken by the noise, realized I was gone. Then, as if struck by a sudden thought, he ran out to the backyard. Seconds later, his furious roar echoed through the house like thunder. What the hell? The floorboards in the shed are gone. That damn girl, she hid something from us. She took everything. By that time, I was already driving east, chasing the pale light of dawn on the highway. That's when my phone, left on the dashboard, began to vibrate violently. The screen flashed, Dad. I ignored it. Seconds later, Mom. Then Amelia. One call after another, relentless, as if they were trying to erase my existence through sheer noise. When the calls finally stopped, the messages began. A flood of notifications filled the screen. I pulled into a parking area and tapped the display. What I saw weren't apologies or remorse, just a torrent of ugly words. Where are you? Come back right now. Everything you took belongs to us. You know what'll happen if you defy us. Don't tell me you took what was under the shed, too. That was family property. Tell the truth. No anger rose in me this time, only a cold, solid certainty. They felt no guilt, none at all. There was no saving them. I turned off my phone and pressed my foot down on the accelerator again. Money, I had plenty of. But there wasn't a single soul in the world who truly saw my effort. my worth. And then, suddenly, the words of my professor from college echoed in my mind. Your business plan is fascinating. With that passion and analytical mind of yours, you're bound to succeed. If you're serious about this, I'll be your first backer. And if you ever find yourself in trouble, call me anytime. Professor Anderson, on the day of my final seminar presentation, while the other professors snickered and dismissed my plan as a student's fantasy, he alone looked at me with steady, serious eyes. This isn't a student's dream, he'd said. It's a completed business proposal. You mean this? Those words became the anchor that kept me from sinking so many times. My hands were trembling as I turned my phone back on. I scrolled through my contacts until I found his name and pressed call, almost like a prayer. Even though it was early morning, he answered right away. Hello, Anderson speaking. Professor Anderson, I'm sorry for calling so early. It's me, Betty Smith. Could I have a moment of your time? There were no sobs in my voice, but I knew he could hear the tension buried in it. He didn't ask questions, he just spoke gently yet firmly. I can tell something's happened. Take a deep breath and tell me everything you can. Calmly. That calm, warm voice steadied me. I drew in a long breath and spoke. Clear, precise, stripped of emotion. My business capital has been stolen by my family. I've left home, taking what assets I have left. This isn't an emotional runaway. It's theft and a direct threat to the survival of my company. Professor, I need your help. Please tell me the most effective and lawful action I can do now. By the time I reached his home, the sun had already risen. He said nothing, just ushered me inside and had his wife pour a cup of hot coffee. When I cupped the mug in my hands, the warmth seeped slowly into my cold fingers. With a cup of coffee before me, I set aside my emotions and reported the facts. The incident, the losses, my family's behavior, and every conceivable risk, calmly yet precisely. He waited for me to finish speaking, then handed me a business card. Then we'll act quickly and by the book. This is a lawyer I trust. Corporate law is his specialty, and he's sharp. You should contact him, and at the same time, let's file a police report. The police? Of course, this isn't a family dispute. It's a crime, even if the thief is your own father. You're on your way to becoming a business owner. You must learn now how to stand against injustice without hesitation. His words sliced through the last remnants of my doubts. Right then, I called the lawyer. Under his clear instructions, I headed to the nearest police station. When I said, I'm here to file a theft report, my voice didn't waver at all. Everything moved faster than I expected. The lawyer traced the gold bar's sale route and uncovered undeniable evidence that my father had sold them without my consent. Just a few days later, that evidence reached my parents' house. We're requesting that you come with us for questioning. Before my mother and sister's stunned eyes, my father, still in his pajamas, was escorted into a police car. The neighbors peeked out through the curtains. It was the collapse of the one thing my father prized above all else: his reputation. He was arrested but quickly released on bail. And that's when their ugly counterattack began. He hired a lawyer of his own and claimed, I didn't steal anything. My daughter borrowed money from me as a loan for her business. I simply reclaimed what was owed when she failed to repay me. A blatant lie, that's not all. He called every relative, his voice breaking with fake tears. She's been manipulated by some man. She's abandoned her family. She's always been unstable, bad with money. The relatives who didn't know the truth believed his words. Soon, my phone was filled with messages of condemnation. How could you do this to your own father? Withdraw the complaint and apologize at once. In an instant, I had become the villain, the ungrateful daughter, isolated and alone. Then came Amelia's turn. She began posting anonymous reviews and comments online. Total scam, overpriced fake consulting. The CEO is greedy enough to sue her own parents. The lies spread across the internet like wildfire. A few of my clients called, awkwardly asking for clarification. Sales inquiries stopped coming altogether. The damage to my business had begun. And finally, my mother delivered the cruelest blow. She left tearful voicemails again and again. Please just give in. Everything will be fine if you do. We all love you truly. Don't drag this out any longer. Please don't put us to shame any more than this. It was a psychological assault. one that manipulated my guilt and tried to force all the blame onto me. For the first time in my life, I truly wanted to disappear. I called Professor Anderson again with a trembling voice. "I'm tired, Professor. Maybe I should have just endured it all. Maybe this is my fault." On the other end, his voice came firm but kind, like steel wrapped in warmth. "Don't lose heart. Giving up now is exactly what they want. You're an entrepreneur, aren't you? Do you know what the greatest liability in business is? It's surrendering to unreasonable demands. Fight completely and legally. Gather evidence. Strike with the law. Confront them with the truth. I'll support you with everything I have." His words snapped me back to myself. Yes, he was right. I was no longer just a daughter who cried in silence. I was a businesswoman. I contacted my lawyer and began preparing for counterattack. First, against my father's claim on the existence of a loan, I collected every piece of evidence proving my financial independence. Old emails, bank statements from when I had paid my tuition on my own after refusing my parents' support. Everything. Next came Amelia's online defamation. My lawyer immediately filed a disclosure request with the internet provider. The shield of anonymity she hid behind would soon crumble, though she didn't yet know it. Months passed, and the tide began to turn once more. My business, which had once faltered under the weight of slander, began to recover. Through transparent communication and unwavering service to existing clients, I regained trust, and even deepened it. One client told me, "We know your work better than anyone. Don't let those foolish rumors bother you." Their words brought tears to my eyes. Then came a new opportunity. An IT company approached me for a comprehensive consulting contract to launch a new division. It was the largest project I had ever secured. Meanwhile, my family home was falling apart. In court, my father's lies collapsed before the hard evidence I presented. The decisive blow came when the lawyer read aloud an old email from him. "Don't expect any money from me. Do whatever you want." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. My father's face was drained of color, and he lowered his head in silence. Amelia, whose identity had been exposed through the disclosure order, received a formal notice from my lawyer for an enormous damages claim for defamation. She panicked. Their finances deteriorated rapidly. They fell behind on property tax payments. Desperation turned inward. They began blaming one another. One afternoon, about 6 months after I'd moved into my new office, my assistant called through the intercom, her voice uneasy. "Ma'am, there are 2 women at reception who claim they must see you. I don't recognize them." I knew immediately who they were. I drew a quiet breath and spoke calm. "All right, take them to the meeting room." When I opened the door, there they were, my mother and sister, almost unrecognizable. Their once expensive clothes were gone. My mother's hair was streaked with gray. The arrogance that once gleamed in my sister's face had vanished, replaced by exhaustion and fear. The moment I entered, my mother broke down as she sobbed in tears. "Please, come back to us. Your dad truly regrets everything. Without you, we—" Beside her, Amelia apologized deeply. "I'm so sorry, Betty. Please withdraw the lawsuit. Take down the claims. I was stupid, I know that now. I'll never repeat my mistakes again. Please help us." It was a pitiful sight. The same people who had mocked me, stolen my future, were kneeling before me. I sat down across from them, expressionless. Then I spoke quietly and precisely. "Help you? Yes, I suppose things are difficult for you now. You've lost your home, your money, your precious reputation. But you know what? You've brought all of this upon yourselves." At my cold words, they flinched and looked up in fear. "You say Dad has repented?" "No, he's not sorry. He's simply afraid. Afraid of losing everything after being caught. And your apology isn't about remorse. It's about avoiding your responsibilities. There's no sincerity in that." "No, that's not—" "You didn't just steal my money. You trampled my effort, my time, my dreams. On my 22nd birthday, when you sold my future so coldly, that was the moment you stopped being my family." I paused, met their eyes, and delivered my final words, slowly and clearly. "I'm no longer related to you all." The sentence struck them like a blade. My mother gasped. The color drained from Amelia's face. I rose to my feet. "Don't ever appear before me again. I've already made that clear through my attorney. The next time we meet, we'll be in court." Without another glance, I left the room. Behind me, I thought I heard my mother's sobs, but I didn't turn back once. Back in my office, I pressed the intercom. If those two women ever come again without an appointment, do not, under any circumstances, let them through. My voice was calm, cold, and unshakable. My assistant hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. Roger, ma'am. But that wasn't enough. Their visit was no longer just emotional intrusion. It was a clear act of harassment, a threat to both my peace of mind and my company's safety. I called my lawyer immediately. Something just happened. My mother and sister came to my office earlier. I suspect they'll come again. Please begin formal proceedings for a restraining order. I need to secure both my mental stability and the integrity of my business. Sensing my resolve, the lawyer replied firmly, I understand. I'll begin the procedures immediately. Some days later, my lawyer informed me that my family had received the certified warning letter and that the court had officially issued a restraining order. Since that day, neither my mother nor my sister has ever appeared before me again. Through whispers carried by others, I heard that their house had finally been seized and they got scattered. My father lost the trial. He was convicted, with a suspended sentence, and ordered to pay compensation. Unable to find steady work, he now lives by taking day labor jobs. My mother sought shelter at a distant relative's home. As for Amelia, I don't know where she is, and I have no desire to know. Whether they now spend their days cursing each other or quietly trying to rebuild what's left of their lives no longer has anything to do with me. That belongs to another world, another story. I am now walking my own path. My company has continued to grow, steadily and surely. Today, we have a bright, spacious office in the heart of the city. After retiring from the university, Professor Anderson joined us as our corporate advisor. He now sits beside me, smiling with genuine pride as he watches the company's progress. Perhaps, in the truest sense, he is my family. Recently, I bought myself a small apartment, a reward for everything I've overcome. From the window, the glittering city lights look far warmer, far gentler than the view I once saw from that lonely office on that night long ago. This room, this company, this view, I've built all of it with my own hands. It is my fortress, my world, something no one can ever take away. That day's events were, perhaps, both the greatest tragedy and the greatest gift of my life. They stole my gold bars, yes, but in return, I gained something far more precious: true freedom and a strength beyond measure. Holding a glass of champagne, I gazed out at the countless lights beyond the window. My future shines before me, bright, endless, unclouded. There is nothing left that can cast a shadow over my life. With true freedom finally in my hands, my story has only just begun.